Guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day, whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening. I'm stoked you're all here. Today we are going to continue box 2, case 2, which are my more premium imports, and we are on episode 3 of 4. So we've got this video, and then we've got a video I'll try to release tomorrow, and that will wipe out case 2. Then we'll have some regular videos come out for a few days, and then I'll put out the USA case, which would be case 3 of 4. So we're going to get started today. First, I just want to say thank you to the channel members, and thank you to anyone who's come in to watch my knife, my EDC content. I really appreciate it. I do really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And the first knife, as we get to the middle of the case, is this Wehr knife, Allie-P. This is a super refined little knife. I had followed Wehr knives and still do on Instagram for a really long time. He's a custom knife maker. Every now and then they'll do a production run with Riot. And this was kind of an under-hyped run. I wasn't that aware of it. Kept up with it on Instagram, kind of as an inside job. And it didn't sell out right away. And I was able to go pick one up. You've got this just wicked hollow ground blade, therapeutic slicer, smaller size knife, right? So it's not going to be a big or a full size knife. I'm going to guess it's going to be pretty close to the size of our bug out, give or take 1/8 of an inch. But you're working with titanium contoured handles. They're done really nicely. I specifically picked this colorway because I like the neutralness of it with the black pivot collar, the black studs, black back spacer, black clip. It's got amazing detent both for the thumb flick and for the middle finger flick off the studs. Super nice blade steel. I love the way the blade looks. I don't like it all smutsy. And for some reason, my red Divo rag seems to leave smuts too. I need to get some fresh rags over here out of the other room. But yeah, this is the Wehr Allie-P. It's a great knife. Fantastic access to the lock bar. Is actuated by thumb studs only. Doesn't have a front flipper. Doesn't have a traditional flipper. But the thumb studs work very well. Very comfortable in my hand. Don't feel the clip. Great office carry, gentleman's folder, perfectly centered, just a mad win. That is the Wehr Knives logo, M390 on that side, very little blade billboarding, just an elegant little knife. So moving on, we come to a knife that's outside of my normal jam, and it's the second knife I picked up from Mr. Designs. This is the Mr. Designs Zero. This is probably one of the most minimalistic, unknife looking, neutral knives I've ever seen. The blade sits perfectly flush into the handle. It's an M390 blade that, as you can tell, it's very thin. You've got this little corner that's exposed that is your flipper tab. No jimping on there. You don't need it. You can push button this, or you can light switch it, and it just snaps to life. This M390 blade is so thin. That's what attracts me to this knife. After talking to Mihai and picking up the knife I'm going to show you next, which was the first Mr. Designs knife I picked up. But a therapeutic little slicer, perfect office knife, pokey stabby, splinter digger if you need it, fingernail cleaner if you need it. The button lock is just spot on. I mean, you've got detent in the geometry and the way that lock bar is positioned, but it just sucks itself back home. Nice titanium handles. I got the black and satin. Whoops. That was me failing it. Now this knife is going to be bigger than the bug out. If I'm not mistaken, this guy comes in right around the size of our PM2. PM2 is going to be a little bit bigger. So it comes in right between the size of the Bug Out and the PM2. But the Zero is, again, a thin, very neutral handled blade, and in the pocket it feels like it's not even there, and it doesn't even look like a knife. To pull it out, to use it, make a couple of cuts, put it back away, people might not even realize you used a knife. But that's the Mr. Zero, OEM by Bestech, M390, and it is a banger. But what attracted me to Mr. Designs was this particular knife. This is the Mr. Cipher. They have a Cipher and they have a Cipher D. This is the Cipher. The Cipher D is the drop point. So the main Cipher is OEM by Bestech, M390, satin blade. Titanium handles were extra. It came with carbon fiber handles, and then you could add these handles for like $70, the titanium, and I just thought they were cool. Very thin black blade stock. You've got this flipper tab that has this jimping that just wraps around the corner here, which gives you a push button or a light switch. Very elegant. Fits the hand like a dream. And this is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, a PM2 length knife. Right about exactly. But a much thinner blade and a little bit longer blade. And where that comes in handy is slicing. Slicing and cutting, cutting and slicing. So this knife, like the Zero, is very slicey. That Tanto is very slicey. Even though it's a compound ground, it's thin and slicey, which means it's going to be a great piercer. And you've got a splinter digger tip if you need it. You've got fantastic action. Bestech just kills it, I think. The detent's great on this knife. I'm not a flipper only guy, but I really do like the action of this knife and that low profile flipper, because when I flip it, I have nothing there. I mean, it's better than a kickstop. My jimping's back here right below the lockup and the lock bar. So that is the Mr. Designs Cipher and M390 from Bestech and Mr. Designs. And then we move into, probably it was my knife of 2023, and it's just an absolute banger. This is the Kunwu Padre in Van X steel, titanium. This is the stonewash. It's got the diamond pattern, titanium, the Damascus pivot collars, really good clip, drop shut as you would ever want. It's got a great front flipper if you're into front flippers, because it works right off the angle of that blade. I love the middle finger flick. I think the hole is perfectly designed. The corners are catchy but not sharp. When I say catchy, they're very angled where they're not smooth and you're not going to slip out of them. The ergonomics of this knife are next level good. Probably some of the best ergonomics in my collection. And in terms of if I was going to go wear out a bunch of cardboard, what would I probably choose to do that with? The Padre might be right up there towards the top. Let me get a piece of paper without getting just like 6. An absolutely therapeutic slicer. Whoops, whoops. That's all cut air, guys. Very slicey, therapeutically so. I apologize for going into the slicey trance, but that is the Kunwu Padre, probably one of the best values. I was on Kunwu's site tonight during Metal Mondays and thought that these were back in stock. However, they are back in stock, but they're not the frame lock. They are the X lock or the bar lock. And I would recommend anyone who's interested in one of these knives, wait for the frame lock. I've got some Kunwus that are X-locks. I've got some Kunwus that are frame locks. This knife deserves the frame lock treatment because the detent is so crisp. It is an absolute beauty. Now, if you like bar style locks and you know that it's still going to deploy great, but it's not going to have that snap, it's the exact same blade, exact same wonderful ergos. I just think another huge plus about this knife is its detent. It is so crisp. I love it, love it, love it. It's the Kunwu Padre. And moving on, we come to one of my OGs. This is my Grant gripper that does not fail the lock test. And that's the last time I'll ever spine whack a knife. I always say that. Middle finger flick, multi-deployment, full-size knife. So I've got a flipper tab. I've got a front flipper, whoops, that I just missed. That I missed twice. And then the way I deploy it is with this pill-shaped deployment hole. This is a Wicked Wharncliffe, designed by Jason Grant. Full-size knife. Very full-size knife. So the gripper is going to clock in right under 8 3/4 inches. The blade is going to be 4 inches. Cutting area is going to be 3 1/4. The handle is going to come in right over 4 3/4. And where I grab it, it's a healthy 4 1/2 inches. So for me, that is from this front finger choil to right here is 4 1/2 inches. This knife is a poker. It is a splinter digger extraordinaire, probably one of the pokiest knives I have. It's a deep hollow ground S35VN blade, and it is slicey. And more so than that, whoops, it is very piercy. So this would be a Slurpee saver. This would be a splinter digger. It wouldn't be something you'd want to pry with because that tip is very, very acute, we could say. Action on this knife is fantastic. I love the blacked out. I got some black pivot collars from a brother in the community. So my only off black is the G for the Grant gripper. I love it. It's forever knife. Huge fan. So much so that Jason came out with a smaller kind of reverse of what I call the gripper's angry little cousin. And this is the Grant Tripper. So the Tripper is a little Tonto with a hollow and a flat. Very, very slicey. Very, very acute. Thin behind the edge. We've got a splinter digger tip, an absolute devastating piercer, and a knife that fits my hand as well as I could have ever imagined. It's small. It's a smaller knife than I'm usually used to. This is probably going to be closer to the size of our mini bug out. I don't have it out here, so we can throw this up. I gotta clean up my knives. And you'll see it's a little bit smaller than the bug out, but that point really extends out there. So one of the things that Jason designed in this iteration is the coffin-shaped deployment hole, which I can tell you works very well. Again, OEM by Bestech. There's a lot of similarities here, a lot of differences. It's kind of the mirror image, and it has the crosshatch versus the perpendicular and horizontal. You've got multiple deployments. You've got your flipper tab, your front flipper, and your middle finger flick. Perfect, perfect choil for me. Perfect in my hand. Just an aggressive little small pocket knife that is definitely up to the task of whatever, unfortunately, you would encounter if you needed to put it into action. And it cuts stuff really well. So that is the little tripper. And then Jason was doing some work on a few of his black trippers because he had these available for a while. And he did a mod on this one that he put up for sale on his Instagram page. And he took a black and he smoothed off all the high points to give it that satin and black look. And then he went into the blade and he did a hollow grind. So instead of it now being a traditional looking Tonto, it's got more of a hollow ground wicked drop point blade. So I love this. This was a full black on black. Still got the pokey tip. It's got this wicked hollow grind that I can run all the way up the blade. I've still got that very piercy tip. I've got a 1 out of 1 knife that looks just unique as it can be. Hand ground by Jason. I think it's super cool. Again, it's got the same profile and is the same knife as my regular tripper, my factory tripper. It's just been ground on and customized. So great little knives. I'm a huge fan of Jason's knives. But as we move along, we come to one of Lefty's knives. And this here, guys, is the Divo Knives Buzz. The Buzz is a knife that was OEM'd by Best Tech. It is also, if I'm not mistaken, in Elmax. I could be wrong about that. I forgot what they built this out of. But guys, I can tell you it's my favorite Divo knife. It has some of the best detent. It's a top flipper. I don't do top flippers, and I really don't do these that are like that, but it works really well. It just, the centering over the pivot just seems to be pretty intuitive. But again, I'm only going to middle finger flick this knife, and you've got this nice geometrical hole, blade hole that works very, very well. The detent on this knife is fantastic. It's running on skiff. It's got that satin hollow that is just sick. Sharp, little sheep's footy, super comfortable knife like all Divo knives. I just love it. I'm a huge fan. And that is the Divo Knives Buzz. So moving on, we come to the Null Knives Voodoo. Null Knives Voodoo. This is its second set of scales. My detent ball just broke. I heard that snap. I'm going to have to do some maintenance on that. Let's see something here. That was interesting. I flicked it and heard a pop, which makes me think I'm going to have to send this in. Let's see what we got there. Oh, thing just snapped off. Let's see. Yep, there's my detent ball right there. See it? So what I'm going to do, there's also a little bug. I killed a little bug. So I'm going to make this be a project for tomorrow. But that is the Null Knives Voodoo, guys. Great knife. They've got a great warranty department. I don't think I'll need it. I'll think as long as I can find a little baggie. Give me 1 second. I've got to have a little screw baggie around here somewhere. Let's put it in this Chris Reeve flower pot shovel head. All right. Let's see if I can find something that's smaller. Guys, give me 1 second. Got to get a little bag here. Take our detent ball. Put Put it in there. This little thing came loose, so I don't know if that came loose when the detent ball came out. I'm going to have to check that when I take it apart, but that ought to make for an interesting video. So that is the Null Knives Voodoo, and that is the Null Knives Voodoo detent ball. So we will set that aside, and then we will pull out one of the second most impressive knives from Vosteed this year. This is the Vosteed Dachshund. This is a fantastic knife. I'm a huge fan of Vosteed, especially after trying out my buddy A to Z Psyop, which I think is the knife of the year. This knife, usually I do not like bar locks. You guys know that. This one has snap. It has detent. Do not know how they achieve that. It's got a thumb, front flipper, top flipper that works amazingly well for me. I love the blade shape and the blade design. I love the ergonomics of the handle, which when you look at it, it looks like it would feel uncomfortable, but it really doesn't. It's an absolute comfort, a joy in the hand. It is thin behind the edge. This one's designed by you, one of the owners. And it's M390 and titanium. It is right around $229, I think, retail. And they've come out with the little Taurus, I can't ever pronounce that right. And it's similar, but smaller. It's going to be kind of a budget knife. Has some differences. Instead of having the thumb studs, it's got the thumb disc. G10, little different body, shorter, but it's going to be a $72 knife if you're not in the market for a $229 knife. $222, I think, something like that. I love this knife. It cuts great. It carries great. The clip works well. Usually, like I say, axis locks are not my thing. This one has a great reverse flick, has a great thumb flick, and has a top flipper that you can't fail because it extends up so far that all you have to do is get it with a little flick and you are good to go. So that is the Vosteed Dachshund. Moving on, we come to one of my favorite button locks. And this, my friends, is the Maxace Babylon. The Maxace Babylon is an absolute beast. It is a huge, full-sized, pokey stabby M390 blade that's super slicey. I've got piles of paper over here. Super slicey, super pokey, has one of the smoothest buttons in existence. You got these huge oversized thumb studs if you want to use thumb studs. You've got this middle finger flick hole if you want to use your thumb or your middle finger flicker. Got a titanium body, M390 2021 Babylon on the blade, Maxace on the other side. Again, guys, the ergos on this knife are to die for. It just feels so good in the hand. Peter at A Therapeutic Edge drew my attention to this knife. I saw a review he did on it, or an overview. And then when I saw one become available back in the day on White Mountain Knives, I had to grab it. It's $250, I think, at the time. But for titanium and for M390, you can't beat that. It's a great button lock. And this is the Maxace Babylon. So moving on, we come to the last knife in this video, which will bring us one video closer to the end of box number 2. But this is one of my all-time faves. This is the Bird Blade Mini Sweeney. I had the Bird Blade Sweeney. It was a little bit big for me. It's about paramilitary 2 size, a little bit longer. And although I was carrying it, I wasn't carrying it as much. It was micarta. This one I picked up in the carbon fiber. It's a little smaller than I thought it was going to be, but at the same time, it's a perfect size for me for what I use it for, which is an office carry or a light EDC carry. It's got a fantastic front flipper. It's got a wonderful deployment hole. It's OEM by Riot. Super slicey, just a great little blade. I'm a huge fan of Berg blades, and especially the Sweeney. I think it's one of the best knives that they've made. I'm also a huge fan of the Barber, button lock Barber, and I've got the Slim, the Berg Slim. Berg just seems to have some great designs, and they have some great OEM partners. So guys, as we move through JuhVon's second case, his imports, we've got our Berg's blade, little mini Sweeney, we've got our big Babylon button lock, we've got our Dachshund, we've got our detintless Null knives Voodoo, which will be remedied. We've got our Divo Buzz. We've got our Tripper Custom, our regular Tripper. We have our Grant Gripper. We have our Kunwu Padre. We have our Mr. Cipher. We have got our Mr. Zero. And finally, we've got our Wehr Allie-P. Guys, we're getting there. So this is the completion of case number 2, video number 3. One more video coming tomorrow, and we'll finish this case up. And if you've made it this long, thank you. Please hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out in the algorithm, and it'll keep you updated when I put up new content. Guys, thank you. Please look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please look out for each other. Go forward with love in your hearts, and always choose debate, not hate. Peace.